Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video from Aman Talks FPL. Now in today's video we're going to be going through my Game Week 7 team selection and a quick review of how I'm currently going in Game Week 26, noting that the entire Game Week isn't over, but it was a bit painful because, spoiler alert, I didn't triple captain Salah, I played my wildcard, and so yeah, that was a painful watching him play Norwich and Leeds and absolutely tearing it up, but that's all in the past. I want to know how I'm going to go for Game Week 27, and so if you guys enjoy the video, really appreciate a thumbs up. Do please consider subscribing as well to the channel if you haven't already, and let's get straight into it. So Game Week 26 was a bit of a tumultuous one. I mean, I had all these plans ready about transfers, etc., and then we had double Game Week 28 and 29 fixture announcements, and that completely changed my plans, and I actually decided to wildcard in the end. Now, looking at the wildcard team that I ended up in, it's pretty template to what you'd see in the majority, I think, on Twitter, but I made so many changes to my team. I mean, the only players who really stayed were Ramsdale, Trent. I didn't have Salah in my team at that point in time because he was one of the main targets of 26. So yeah, Ramsdale and Trent were in the team, and that was it. I think they were the only two players who actually stayed in my original team. I got rid of my double Watford strikers, completely changed my bench, completely changed a lot of the defenders as well, got rid of Cancelo, Bowen. It was a bit of a risk that I took, but I wanted this wildcard to set me up not only for Game Week 26 and really target the double game week, but also set me up nicely for double game week 28, double game week 29, and also for the blank game week 30. Now, hopefully, if everything goes to plan, I should be able to cover that off. So we'll see if I do get the benefits of that wildcard. I mean, I have massively lost out on Salah's points. I mean, he scored 28 in the combined double game week. It was just massive, and anyone who watched highlights would know that he definitely could have scored more. So if you guys hadn't seen on Twitter, I was actually on Andy Let's Talk FPL's Twitter space reacting to Salah, and yeah, it was painful as a non-triple captainer, but you know what, I think, yes, despite being on a small red arrow, I was around 21k coming into this game week, now I'm on 23k, I still have 6 players to go, so I've got Ramsdale, Kilman, Saiss, Saka, and Lacazette and Jimenez all to play in that fixture tomorrow morning as I'm currently recording. Now, obviously that game's got a lot of players versing each other, so I'm not sure how well, I'm going to come out of that. A 0-0 would mean, clean sheets for my defenders, but blanks for my forwards. So I feel like as long as some of my players get some returns, I might be able to correct that red arrow and actually get to a grey arrow or even a small green arrow. And hopefully the gains will come in the next few game weeks. And I think especially if Arsenal do get that confirmed double game week in 28, hasn't been confirmed yet, but that would allow me to actually bench boost in 28. So I'm not going to go full on into chip strategy. If you guys haven't checked out my stream with FPL Plan, I highly recommend it. I go full blown into chip strategy there. So I want to keep this video more concise, I think, to specifically Game Week 27. So yeah, at the moment I'm on 120 points and a red arrow. It's pretty crazy when you say it out loud, but I'm about 6 points off the safety score. So if I can recover that in the next game of Arsenal and Wolves, obviously I'll be very happy with a green arrow. So basically with this wildcard, I've kind of forced myself into a free hit 27 just because I've had triple Arsenal, triple Liverpool, and I want to keep them on the other side of that. So free hit 27 was definitely in my mind, so I have activated the button, I have made a draft, and it's probably very template to what you've seen on Twitter. So what I'll do in this team selection video is I'll go through kind of each position, kind of my reasons why I've gone for a specific player, and I'll show 2 drafts just because like the core of my team I don't expect to change, depending on any kind of press conference news or injuries. It's really a couple of spots that I'm still deciding on. So I'll show a couple of drafts, but let's get into that decision process just now. So just taking a quick look at the Game Week 27 fixtures in isolation. So there's a few fixtures that I wanted to target here specifically. So I think Tottenham versus Leeds. Leeds have been so leaky at the back, so I think going with Son and Kane is almost a must for myself. Southampton versus Norwich. I do think getting an attacker against Norwich, who are a pretty leaky defense, and even a defender, because I do think Southampton have a good chance of a clean sheet. Burnley obviously have the double game week against Crystal Palace and Leicester, 2 teams who are very susceptible to set pieces. So, I think eyeing up the right Burnley defender is a key consideration on a free hit. I think Nick Pope and Weghorst are probably more obvious choices, but that third Burnley player is a little bit up for debate. Manchester United vs Watford, again, a fixture that you could definitely target from an attacking or even a defensive point of view. And then Everton Man City, I think, is a bit of the banker. You just see Man City wanting to bounce back after that loss to Tottenham. Everton have been looking really poor recently, not very good in attack, defensively very poor, so you can see City, cruising through that one. So I think 3 City is definitely a key for myself on a free hit. Taking a quick look at those specific teams that I called out, I thought this would give a nice summary as to, looking at their season-long XG and expected goals conceded data. So when you look at a team like City, they're the second best team for expected goals and the best team for expected goals conceded. So immediately that screams out, they're going to score goals and very likely keep a clean sheet. And I've actually added the opponent's stats as well. So Everton have not been the most free scoring recently, so I think a clean sheet is very clearly on the cards for City. So going with the City defender seems like a must have. Looking at Tottenham's opponent, Leeds, 1.83 expected goals conceded is second worst in the entire league. So going with your attackers like Son and Kane seems quite obvious. The Manchester United Watford one is a little bit, the numbers don't tell the full picture, just because United's both their expected goals and their expected goals conceded numbers have actually improved under Rangnick when this is taking account of the whole season. And similarly with Watford, they've just appointed Roy Hodgson. He has kind of shored things up at the back a little bit as well, so you can't really read too much into those stats. And I think the fact that United are a little bit inconsistent for my liking means I'm probably only likely going to go for one option. Southampton, you can see that Norwich's attacking stats of 0.82 and pretty okay defensive stats for Southampton, especially at home, means I probably am likely going to lean towards going with a Southampton defender, probably over the likes of a Manchester United one. And Burnley, the stats don't really paint a good picture, just because it looks like from an attacking point of view they're not the best, and defensively also not the best either. But I think we also have to look at a little bit more recent form. Like Burnley have kept 5 clean sheets in their last 10 matches. And as I mentioned, Crystal Palace and Leicester both defensively very poor from set pieces. So the likes of a Ben Mee, a James Tarkowski, definitely scope for them to be amongst the points. We already saw Ben Mee score in game week 26. And I think the likes of Nick Pope and Weghorst will be decent considerations as well, especially when you look at that Leicester game. 1.77 goals conceded, or expected goals conceded, I should say, for Leicester. It just points toward you probably do want at least one Burnley attacker. So that's the kind of general vibe I get out of these fixtures and the teams that we're targeting. So I'll just go through position by position now. So starting off by looking at the goalkeepers, look, on a free hit, which I am, a double game week keeper is the most obvious choice. I'm not going to talk too much about it. Nick Pope by far I think is the best one. Burnley defensively, as I just mentioned, they've kept 5 clean sheets now in their last 10. Just kept a clean sheet against Spurs. So for me, a free hit with Pope is almost an automatic selection, and I'm actually even debating whether I captain Nick Pope. You'll see that when I get onto a couple of other drafts. I think if you are not on a free hit, if you have De Gea, I think he's definitely fine to keep. I don't think making the switch for a -4, let's say for example, is worth it necessarily, but Pope is by far the best free hit keeper to go for. Now next up, looking at defenders. So again, the strength of Manchester City's defense makes me just scream towards Cancelo's being an almost automatic selection, just because we know how attacking he is. He doesn't rank very highly on the predictor points courtesy of FPL Review. I should mention that these tables are from, but I just think the eye test, you look at Cancelo in the last couple of game weeks, he's had I think 11 shots in the box, or 11 shots in total, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's been very, very attacking, as he always is. The clean sheet odds are very high as well, so Cancelo is basically a lock for me. I think going for one Burnley defender in addition to Pope is probably also going to be on the cards, and this is where one of those positions that I'm still up for debate. Do I go with Tarkowski, Ben Mee, Roberts, or even Eric Peters, who's a little bit cheaper, about 4.2 million, I believe he is. Now, my first thought was to go for one of the centre-backs, just because Leicester and Crystal Palace have been very poor defensively. They're actually the two teams that have conceded the most goals from set pieces. So going with those attacking centre-backs like Tarkowski or Ben Mee could be an option. Ben Mee just scored. He also could have actually gotten an assist as well in that last game against Tottenham. Tarkowski had COVID, but he just did come back. He's probably the most nailed on. I mean, him and Ben Mee are quite nailed on. Connor Roberts and Eric Peters have a slight rotation risk about them, but Connor Roberts has been performing very well. He's a little bit more attacking in open play as a fullback, so I think it's a case of if I can make significant upgrades elsewhere with that 0.3 million saving, I probably would go for Connor Roberts. But if I can fit a team that I like with still having Ben Mee or Tarkowski, I'll probably lean there, and the algorithms do favour Ben Mee as the best kind of defender to go for from Burnley. So for me, having that Burnley defender is also probably a lock. At the moment, I'm leaning Ben Mee, but I do think that there is valid reason to also go for a Connor Roberts as well. At the third defender spot, really, the FPL review table also shows it. They've got Southampton and Manchester United ranked quite high. Now, personally, I'm actually opting to go with the Southampton defender. Main reason is that Southampton defensively at home are actually quite solid, and Norwich's attacking is pretty poor. Now, Watford have not been the most attacking team as well under Roy Hodgson, and so United could have a good chance of a clean sheet. But I just think that with Ismaila Sarr returning to Watford and United, I just don't trust their defense, and also just even the options that we have to consider. So you've got, Luke Shaw, I think at 5 million is a bit too expensive for me. Same with Maguire at 5.4. And then you're only really looking then, I think, at Dalot. And even Dalot is a bit of a rotation risk. I think he is first choice, but just there's a little bit of lingering doubt. And I think on a free hit, you really want to make sure that you get players you're going to play. That's kind of the point. When you're activating a chip, you want to get your biggest bang for buck. So personally, I'm actually leaning away from the Manchester United defenders and going with the Southampton one. I just got a little bit more faith in them. And so with Southampton, I am looking at either Livramento, Bednarek, or Kyle Walker-Peters. Livramento, interestingly enough, is actually ranked the highest I wonder if part of that is also just due to the fact that he's the cheap one at 4.3 million. He only just came back last game week, and Perot, I think it's a case of we have to wait for press conferences to see what the update is on him. Now, Livramento, if it looks like he's nailed on, probably would be a very easy choice. He's an attacking fullback, and same with Walker Peters. Walker Peters has actually proven to be very, very good in the last few game weeks in terms of an expected goal involvement front for a defender. So I like the fact that he's very attacking as well. He is obviously a little bit more expensive, but I think on a free hit as well, when it's very obvious that the template is so strong on a free hit, going for some of these key differentials, maybe like, you know, a Walker Peters over like a Livramento could be one thing that sways it if he gets an attacking return and a clean sheet. Those extra assist points and also bonus points potential can really sway your favour into getting that green arrow on a free hit. Otherwise, going with someone like a Bednarek, he's pretty good on the underlying bonus point system, but I would definitely favour, I think, going with one of the two fullbacks. So at the moment, I'm leaning towards Walker Peters. If I can make that money stretch, that might mean I might have to drop Ben Mee down to a Connor Roberts. And so, yeah, that's still a decision that I have to make. So this is definitely a position that I'm not 100% certain on, but it definitely will be a Southampton defender. I just haven't decided which one. Now, there is an argument as well to go for a double Manchester City defence because they're such a strong defence. You can see Laporte is also on this list here. I would definitely go with Laporte over Diaz. I think there's no reason to pay the extra for Diaz. And a lot of predictions are actually expecting Diaz to drop out this particular game week. So Laporte for me would be the other defender I'd go for. But I feel like when they're versing Everton, I see that game being almost 3-4-0, to be honest. So I think there could be more upside going with the attackers. And on a free hit, I want to try attack that a little bit more. So I'm personally leaning towards just going with one Man City defender, but there's definitely a case to always go for two as well. Now, again, just to kind of quickly touch on the Manchester City options. So in terms of the two midfielders that I'm looking to target, it's Sterling and Mahrez, and you're going to see them in a lot of, you know, free hit template drafts. The main reason for that is that they have a good chance of actually being, you know, nailed on for minutes. Mahrez, he was benched against Tottenham, but a lot of predictors think that that was a tactical decision, and they fully expect him to come back in this game week against Everton. He's got some rest as well. City also don't play the midweek, so they have their ability to actually play a stronger squad. And now that the title race seems to be wide open again, the fact that Manchester City lost that game and Liverpool won, I think Man City are in a position where they need to keep continuing to field a good, strong team. Obviously, they've got the squad to do that. But Mahrez and Sterling are the top on the minutes per expected goal involvement. A lot of that is boosted by penalties, but that is a benefit. You know, you want the guys who, you know, in a single game week, you want to bank on the certainty of points. So a penalty definitely gives you that. And Mahrez is very good at taking penalties recently, and Sterling is very good at winning them. And I think the pair of them, they've got the best underlying stats. Interestingly enough, FPL Review actually rates Foden and De Bruyne a little bit higher on the predicted points. But personally, just looking at Foden from the eye test, I do prefer the look of Mahrez. He's got an average, I think, of 9 points per match over the last few weeks. He's been absolutely killing it. Like every game that he starts, he's been basically getting a return. And Sterling, we know, has got the upside, recently scored a hat-trick. So for that very simple reason, those are the two Manchester City midfielders that I'm going to be leaning towards. Now, in terms of the other midfielders, as I kind of touched on, I think against Leeds, Heung-min Son is almost a lock. I think that game really suits him. You know, runners from midfield always tend to do very well against Leeds. You can see he is the highest midfielder of my kind of table in terms of predicted points. There are a few Burnley ones like Cornet, Lennon and McNeil, but I think that's just the algorithm kind of weighting the double fixture. But I think really Son is the one I want to go for. He's a premium asset. I see this game is made for him. And so definitely I will 100% be going with Son on a free hit, barring any injury. Now, the next slot after the two Man City midfielders and Son is probably going to go to a Manchester United midfielder, just because I think that there is still, you know, relevance in going with one of their attackers against Watford. Now, really, it's going to be between Sancho and Fernandes. FPL Review actually has Sancho higher on the predicted points compared to Fernandes, but as I kind of mentioned, if there is an event where Ronaldo doesn't play, Fernandes could be on penalties, and I think having that certainty of points in the one single game week, I think Fernandes, you know, is almost always going to be involved in Manchester United's attack the way that he's been playing recently. Sancho has looked really good as well. I think there's less of a compromise going from, say, Fernandes down to Sancho than, say, a Sterling down to a Foden. So I think if you're looking to, you know, you're struggling for budget, I think going from Fernandes to Sancho is fine. In my own case, I can actually afford it. So I'm just leaning with going with Fernandes. I think he's the more proven asset over the long term. And so I'm not overthinking that decision. The fifth midfielder spot, if you do decide to go for a fifth midfielder, that's, I think, where you can really have a bit of a differential pick. So there's guys in this table here like Ward-Prowse from Southampton. There's Zaha. You could even still consider single game week players as well, like Jared Bowen and Conor Gallagher. Personally, the way that my team is set up, I'm not going to be going with the fifth midfielder. If I was to pick one fifth midfielder though, it probably would be Ward-Prowse, just because he's nice and cheap. You know he's going to play. I mean, set pieces, Norwich are not the best at defending set pieces. Ward-Prowse is on penalties, I believe, as well. So there's a lot of route to points for Ward-Prowse, and he has been doing very well recently. So Ward-Prowse would be my pick of the fifth midfielder. You could consider Kulusevski from Tottenham. He's not in any of these tables here, but listening to guys who are big Spurs fans and kind of have a feeling that Lucas Moura could come into that Leeds match just because he's a bit more of that dribbler and that style of game suits him more. So there's a bit of a rotation risk, I think, around Kulusevski. So for that reason, I think Ward-Prowse would be the one I'd lean towards. Otherwise, you could even consider someone like Zaha. Just recently scored a brace on penalties, but Burnley, as I mentioned, defensively, I think they can provide a bit of a tough match. So I probably would lean towards Ward-Prowse over someone like Zaha for the fifth midfielder. But for my own team, as you'll see soon, I've only got the forward midfielders of Heung-min Son, Fernandes, Sterling and Mahrez. Finally, taking a look at the forwards, again, I don't really think there's too much to debate here. I mean, Harry Kane, even though they blanked against Burnley, I think the Leeds game, there's definitely an option for him to get some attacking returns here. So Harry Kane for me is almost a lock. I don't really consider Ronaldo, even though he is rated very highly here. I just don't like what I'm seeing on the eye test. So Kane for me is the premium striker on a free hit. Weghorst, I think because he has got that double game week, he is actually the highest points predictor on FPL review for the entire game week out of all players, so he's a captain consideration. Now, I'm not 100% certain if I'll captain Weghorst. I could go for Nick Pope, just because I do think that his floor is a little bit higher, but Weghorst and Kane 100% will be in my free hit team. Now, it's really up to that third spot. I think the key decision is between another Southampton attacker. I think going against Norwich is a good fixture. It's either Broja or Adams. Broja is probably the one that I lean towards, just because of when you're trying to fit in the likes of Sterling, Kane, Fernandes, Son, money goes out really quick. And I think saving that 1.5 million for Broja compared to Adams. Now, Broja has not got as many returns as Adams recently. Adams has gotten 3 returns in the last 3 games. But Broja, just for that price, I think we know what he can do. He has delivered points in the past as well. For me, Broja is going to be that really nice and convenient third striker option. And I think it's really a decision as to whether you go with a Broja, say like in that third striker spot, or you go with that fifth midfielder like a James Ward-Prowse. Currently, I've got Broja in a front 3. And so I'll quickly get onto the draft. I don't want to go overly complicated because it is a very template draft. I do see that, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea. I'm playing a free hit. I've got a lot of these players. I'm sure if I added the combined ownership of these players in live FPL, it would come out to a more differential kind of ownership level. Kane, Weghorst, Broja, Sterling, Mahrez, Son, Fernandes, Pope, Cancelo are basically all locked in. Now, the bench, you can see there's not much of a bench to speak of, but that's kind of the limitations of going with all of these premiums. But they are playing Gilmour, Amati, and Williams, so definitely not ideal. So that is one risk going with these Manchester City midfielders, is that if they don't play, then I'm going to have like Gilmour coming off the bench, which is not ideal. So it's really going to be, I'll stick with those players if I've got confidence that they are going to play. So as I mentioned, Ben Mee and Livramento are the 2 spots that I'm really debating in my defense. And so I've just got an alternate draft here. Everything else is the same, except I've just swapped I've just swapped Ben Mee down to Connor Roberts, and I've upgraded Livramento up to Walker Peters. I think that decision will be made on press conferences. If it sounds like Perot from Southampton is fit and ready to go, and there's a chance that Livramento might not play, then I might just lean towards with Walker Peters, who I do think is a bit more nailed on, has got some good attacking threat. I mean, Connor Roberts, yes, he might not have that kind of set piece threat, but I think the chance of a set piece goal are lower than, say, maybe general open play attack, and he has looked good in open play attack. So I'm currently leaning towards the first draft just because that was my initial thought, and I think there is some potential upside with Ben Mee against a weak Crystal Palace and Leicester from set pieces. And you can see I have changed up the captaincy and vice captain as well in this draft. So I've actually got Pope as captain. Those are my 3 main decisions: that second Burnley spot, that Southampton defender, and my captain. I mean, I have considered even going with someone like Son against Leeds. I think in a single game it could be a great captaincy shout. But I personally just want to go with the upside of a double game week. It's strange to say a goalkeeper's got upside, but Nick Pope scored 19 points in a recent double game week, and he scored 13 in the last one as well. So I'm fine with captaining a goalkeeper in a double game week. The thing with Burnley is that they don't score many goals, and so that does give me a slight hesitation with someone like Weghorst. But if Burnley keep it tight, and if they get a clean sheet, Pope is normally always in the bonus points. He makes saves as well, so I'm actually quite happy to captain Nick Pope. So that's probably one thing I probably will make in the last minute decision. I'll post it on Twitter. But yeah, even just speaking out loud, I'm actually talking myself into captaining Nick Pope. So don't be surprised if that's how I end up. But as I mentioned, it's either going to be this draft or the previous one, but I might switch that captaincy to Nick Pope. But it's a pretty template-free hit. Nothing surprising here, but hopefully those kind of reasonings as to why I went through those players in my decisioning helped you guys out there in terms of maybe making your own free hit draft. So that's it, guys. That is my Game Week 27 team selection. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, really appreciate a thumbs up. Do please consider subscribing as well to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next video.